Where Your Wound is a project from Jacob Bannon of Converge, and if those names mean anything to you, you'll know that this record, before you even hear it, is going to have artistic integrity and purity of intent written all over it. And it does. Of course it does. Jacob Bannon would struggle to make a dishonest record if he tried. However, that on its own doesn't mean a record is going to be any good. It just means that whoever did it meant it. In this case, it's kind of a mixed bag. What he's trying to do is a really interesting minimalist kind of spacey melancholic rock that uses a lot of repetition of ideas and then builds layer upon layer. The band themselves have who include some other musicians who you won't be surprised to hear have also worked with Converge or are in Converge, but they themselves cite Pink Floyd and Swans as being influences, but to me it's got more in common with something like Arvo Part or Philip Glass. It's more a kind of a repetition of a theme with layers and layers built upon it, and that on its own is a very interesting, very effective, very powerful and incredibly accessible and pure, emotionally speaking, songwriting style. However, it's also very difficult. And ultimately, I think the downsides to this record are because of the difficulty. To me, this record is way too long. It's baggy in places. There are ideas in it which are used far too much. And that some of the more kind of 6, 7, 8 minute songs could have done with being about 2/3 shorter. A lot of the time, these things are better when they get to their point quicker. All that said, and there's no doubt in my mind that this is a deeply flawed record. The flaws in it come from the fact that this is a very, very personal record. This sounds like someone pouring their soul into what they're doing. And inevitably, because human beings are imperfect, a personal record where someone has obviously not really listened to, the detractors and the aesthetic considerations. It's much more about getting something across. The flaws are because people are flawed, not because the person who did it doesn't have talent and wasn't thinking clearly. And certainly there's no hint in my mind that this was a record made whose errors come through arrogance or anything like that. Over and above that, however, the thing that I can't overlook is how incredibly emotionally powerful this is, despite the fact that there are bits where I want to skip it and I need to move it forward. The ideas are great. The songwriting technique really is very interesting and very effective and emotionally evocative. But the real thing is how obvious it is that this is someone who means it. It's incredibly engaging and emotive and powerful. And I think getting off the fence and coming down on whether I like it or not, the thing that decides this for me is the fact that you can overlook the flaws, you can get past it, and the things that stick with you and the things that mean you go back and listen to the record again are how good the good bits really are. Is it perfect? No. Is it as good as pretty much anything I can name that Converge have done in the Jane Doe era and beyond? No. Is it an incredibly distinct, interesting record which it uses a songwriting technique which actually is completely perfect for what he's trying to do? Yes. God, yes. There's so much to like here that I think ultimately the negatives are not enough to hold it back, even if there's an awful lot wrong with this. I am going to keep listening to this record for most of this year, I suspect. Might not end up in top 20s and things like that, but the ideas are so good and the emotion is so raw, I can't overlook how much I actually like this record, flaws included.